Okay, everyone. I'd like to give a little bit of a breakdown of what I've observed over the last 7 years across the Middle East, mostly as it pertains to the Kurdish people, but also as it pertains to Israel, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and really our allies the world over, and enemies. As most of you are aware, I started following the plight of the Kurdish people when the siege on Kobani began around mid September 2014, with very minimal support from the US and the coalition against ISIS as it existed back then. The Kurds were able to push back a full siege on a pretty major city in the Kurdish regions of Syria. And once they did that, America started to realize that maybe this was somebody they could work with to help fight ISIS and push back their extremism. And so, mid 2016, after the siege on Kobani had been defeated by the Kurds, May 31st, 2016, the offensive against Manbij began. And this was actually a pretty extreme development because this meant going west of the Euphrates River. Now, this area up here between Afrin and Kobani is known as the Manbij Pocket. And at that time, when the Kurds were taking Manbij back from ISIS, it was pretty well known that Turkey was funneling aid and supplies and so forth to ISIS through the Manbij Pocket. So, them crossing the river and taking Manbij represented a pretty serious concern to Turkey because they thought it might have stopped them from being able to supply ISIS. And I believe that they were right, that if the Kurds were able to expand further beyond that, it absolutely would have compromised their ability to help ISIS. But we never found out because Turkey launched what was called Operation Euphrates Shield shortly after the Kurds seized Manbij, and what that entailed was them entering the Manbij pocket through a city called Jerusalem. Coincidentally, 500 years after the Ottoman Empire went through the exact same city during their expansion. I'm sure that was an absolute coincidence. Sure of it. But, anyways, I digress. Turkey went through Jerusalem all the way to Al Bab and Azaz on the western side of the Manbij pocket, and they secured that. So all that zone was Turkey's now. The Kurds could not attack it. Turkey made sure of that. And so in doing so, they momentarily at least maintained their ability to interface with ISIS. Say what you will about it. At the time, that was kind of a generally accepted fact that Shilan or Serena Shim tried to prove through Iranian press TV and was later killed in Turkey. Turkey said it was an accident. The U.S. never investigated. Nobody actually wants to know the truth on that, especially America, because she is a U.S. citizen. But shortly after Operation Euphrates Shield, launched by Turkey, I started pushing to try to get us to close the Manbij pocket. I first suggested on August 19th of 2016 with this graphic that we should allow the Kurds to close the Manbij pocket because I believed that was going to be an effective way to cut ISIS off from their supply, their medical aid, their training, their weapons, everything that Turkey provided to them. And I basically I got zero traction talking to any of the politicians that I reached out to, any of the individuals that interfaced with politicians, zero traction. I kept pushing, but somewhere around late September of 2017, I gave my final effort, and shortly after that, the SAA, the Syrian Arab Army, finally closed the Manbij pocket here. And all of that red underneath it is also Syrian Arab Army. And so they did effectively shut the Manbij pocket. And from there, things escalated rather quickly. The Kurds were able to get to Raqqa and completely surround Raqqa by September 2nd, 2017. Again, I believe this is due to ISIS being completely unable to get outside support. Simultaneously, I was suggesting that the Kurds should probably start moving with U.S. aid toward Deir Hazir, which was a small, basically tiny military outpost in eastern Syria. And I started suggesting that because I started to notice that the SAA was closing a major land route across Syria. And at this point, I started to suspect that that could have detrimental effects for everyone. And so as time continued on, the SAA got to Deir Hazir just ahead of the SDF and our allied forces. And at that point, it was a mad scramble because I was dead certain now that the SAA was attempting to get to a little-known town that really still is relatively insignificant in southeastern Syria called Abu Kamal, which shortly after Deir Hazir, I started indicating that we should probably start to head south toward Abu Kamal. Because at that particular juncture, if the SAA or anyone else allied with the SAA were able to capture Abu Kamal, the consequences could be pretty catastrophic. And so the SAA captured Deir Hazir on September 12, 2017. And on September 18th, I posted this graphic indicating we should start to head south. I further emphasized that through September 18th, September 19th, September 21st, with a bunch of different graphics indicating the detriment that this could cause. These two images were shared side by side with a Facebook story indicating that if the SAA was able to reach Abu Kamal, which is down here in the south of Syria, they would have open track to meet up with the ISF, which was allied at the time with Iran, much more than they're allied with us. And I started to rudimentary convey this message just by demonstrating that there wasn't much standing between Iran and anything they wanted. And so on September 24th, 2017, the Kurds finally and completely seized Raqqa, allowing them to devote a lot of time and attention toward southeastern expansion through Syria. And October 26th, 2017, this was the state of affairs Abu Kamal was right here, and the SDF was closer than the SAA was at the time. But on September 25th, just before this graphic was presented, the KRG went forward with a long anticipated Kurdish independence referendum in Iraq. Now, this referendum was part of the Iraqi constitution and guaranteed to the Kurds that they could vote on their independence at any time and start to work toward independence. That referendum passed with flying colors. Now, there is speculation as to the authenticity of the vote, and yada, 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 yada. Relatively insignificant because it was considered non-binding, but the Kurds were basically saying we want to work toward our independence. And the U.S. had an opportunity at this point to stand up and say, yes, we'd like the Kurds to be their own independent nation, and we're going to help them achieve that by working with Iraq and so forth. But 5 days after the vote, the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, came out and said the U.S. does not recognize the referendum and we stand behind territorial integrity of Iraq and blah, 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 blah. They basically said to the Kurds of northern Iraq that, sorry, you're on your own with this. And that led to what was arguably the greatest strategic snafu we've committed in the region ever. Iran made a somewhat secretive deal with the central government of Baghdad in which they said, we'll help you retake Kirkuk if you allow a bunch of our Iranian loyal Popular Mobilization Forces to put on Iraqi security forces uniforms and operate within the borders of Iraq as Iraqi security. Now, this was the absolute final step in Iran securing a fully open road all the way from Tehran, which is the capital of Iran, to Damascus, which is the capital of Syria. That's a very long road, and it encompasses the entirety of what we call the Levant, or the core of the Middle East. This crossroad in Abu Kamal was the absolute final piece that Syria needed in order to complete the very literal, actual road. Not kidding, this is basically a series of freeways and highways and so forth that connects the capital of Iran to the capital of Syria. And so finally, on December 7th, 2017, the SAA and Iraqi security forces combined, they hit it from two sides, fully seized Abu Kamal and that key juncture in the road. At that very exact moment, there's no way any of this was an accident. Trump announced Jerusalem was the capital of Israel. Erdogan screamed in outrage that that would never be accepted. That's the line for Muslims. There's no way we'll accept Jerusalem as the capital. And Israel bombed Damascus and the road between Damascus and the city just recently claimed by the Syrian Arab Army. Shortly after that, the Turks launched a massive offensive on Afrin, which America and Russia stood aside for. And that took the focus of the Kurds off anything in the southeast and brought them all the way back up to the northwest. And the open road was therefore created. And to this day exists in this exact same state. From Tehran to Damascus, and nearly at this particular juncture, the border of Israel. Not quite, though, because there were still some rebels between the SAA and the border of Israel. Shortly thereafter, the SAA overran those rebels and obtained the exact border of Israel, thereby ensuring letters A through H, the capital of Iran, Baghdad, which was secured through a deal over Kirkuk, Abu Kamal, Deir Hazir, Homs, Damascus, and the border of Israel were all fully secured. And at no point did the U.S. government try to intervene in that. And not only did the U.S. government not try to intervene, they actually seemed to have enticed Iran to transverse this road. They pushed them to the west. And I firmly believe that was because we wanted Iran to engage ISIS. We wanted Iran to engage with the rebels. We wanted Iran to be fully engaged in this conflict. And when it seemed that the Kurds were going to make too much headway, Turkey stepped in and made sure that their attention was focused elsewhere. They did it time and time and time again. And through all these dates and series of events and documentation, I firmly believe that we can definitively say that through the Obama administration, through the Trump administration, with one of the best secretaries of defense ever to live in General James Mattis, or Mad Dog, we orchestrated a plot to bring Iran outside of their borders so that we can manufacture a conflict with Iran and so that we can inevitably engage Iran outside of their borders. And I firmly believe that that's the trajectory we're following. I don't know that there's much that can change it at this point, because that, per Google Maps, is the exact road that I've just given you. Those were the 2 strikes we launched on Iraq, killing al-Soleimani, and right on the Iraqi side of Abu Kamal border. Later on, we were able to add a direct attack on Abu Kamal. This all began with ISIS, but I don't believe that's where this ends, and I don't believe this ends anytime in the near future. So, in summary, I hope that everyone just has an open mind of what's happening, and I hope that people can stay away from the partisan politics. This transcended multiple presidencies, Democrat and Republican, and by all appearances, there's just no refuting it was 100% deliberate. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out anytime. You all know me. I'm passionate about the Middle East, and I'm passionate about us finding a way to achieve peace in the Middle East. I hope you're all with me. I don't want to see our guys over there anymore. Frankly, I don't think the Middle East wants to see our guys anymore. They just want to go about their lives, and I think it's time we let them. Thank you all for listening. Have a great day.